The human system has been designed to be affected via Stockholm syndromized conditioning, by parental conditioning, by consensus consciousness, tribal dynamics, and via simulacrification, via language, to be a participant and reflection of the consensus consciousness and tribal process and the taproot process. So that's not a problem, that's a process. It's a starting point of understanding that if we're designed to be inundated and in a way to learn from consensus consciousness influences or other or tribal influences, that's all well and good as long as we can begin generating a sovereign core of God-aligned conscious understanding within our systems that operates independent and autonomous from those informational inputs, and that doesn't get co-opted by those informational inputs to become a reflection of those without our knowing that it's happened, and or to become an agent of those or an expression or a puppet of those energies. Key areas of the human system that tend to be infiltrated are the backs of the chakras, chakra 1 through 7, and the visual cortex is one of the, and the back of the throat chakra are two of the main infiltration points. If you can overtly influence the visual cortex of a human system, you can, which is overtly visual processing oriented in terms of where the mass of information we processed is in the visual cortex back of the brain. Or if you can affect the third eye, the various levels of the third eye and bring distortion or dysfunction to that. Or if you can affect the throat chakra at the back of the throat chakra and thus compromise free will, discernment, wisdom, decision making, and self-expression, then those are seen as strike points, points to target to have overt influence in order to puppetize a human system. Also at the root chakra, at the back of the root chakra, if you're ungrounded, either from energies arriving from the back of the root chakra or upward through the central channel, energies that move up from the planet, from other people's karmic processes, then those are other ways that can happen. Whenever we're in relationship with anyone, there's a kind of a tacit subconscious agreement that says, I will willingly receive their personal karma upward through my central channel to my root chakra so I can become an unwitting player in their karmic play in order to reflect back to them that which they need to understand in order to learn their way through and out of their karma. Now, that is a process. We wouldn't suggest that it's the optimal process of facilitating another person's evolution. It's kind of the default mode that human beings tend to operate from. And in addition to that, the 2 points, main 2 disrupting points are the inputs from the masculine consensus consciousness through the right hip chakra, the feminine consensus consciousness through the left hip chakra, in which tribalized energies of masculine and feminine tend to inundate the root chakra through those 2 hip chakra points, thus unground or define the perceived reality of life at the root chakra level, which then has a domino effect all the way up through all the other chakras. And thus, all of these can be learning mechanisms if they're looked upon as that and they're seen as that via consciousness rather than them defining our experienced reality. And we're not suggesting this is the totality of influence. That said, this is a significant portion of some of the main areas that we can have overt constructive influence to ensure that we remain sovereign, clear, non-distorted, non-defined by the external process of life, world, other, or anyone we're interacting with relationally or energetically. paradoxically, the crown chakra is often also a point of attempted co-optation, because there are eighth and ninth chakra dynamics of complexified, not sophisticated or conscious, complexified, manipulative spiritual ego that operate at those levels and try to then take over the spiritual process in a human system. So the Om Vajrasattva Hum mantra, requesting that any and all of these chakras, that the doors, if you will, be closed to any energy that's not in your highest and best good, that's not supportive of God-aligned surrendered consciousness, that's not in support of your personal free will and sovereignty, your highest and best good in terms of your arc of evolution as a soul, and your personal optimal co-creative empowerment in concert with the process of God. So I know we've been trying to put 10 pounds of information in a 5-pound bag here. That said, if you work with Lord Vajrasattva, can hear you if you ask, if you basically say, I've now recognized that this energy is disruptive, co-optive, manipulative, influencing, detrimental, not of my conscious will or what I prefer, you can ask that and visualize these doors of the chakras being closed and bolted to any energy that is not of God, or that is not your highest and best good, or most resonant with your soul's dharmic process in this lifetime, those sorts of things. And then those gates must be intentionally guarded. And there's one last caveat in that regard, and that is that your free will be respected in this. Your subconscious parts of your system's free will be respected. Meaning, if you have a part of your system at the root chakra level that said something along the lines of, I don't deserve to be happy, that part of you has free will. And if that pattern said, I don't deserve to be happy, what energies is it going to allow in through the left and right hip chakra doorways to affect that experienced life result that seemingly feels familiar or necessary or appropriate based upon a subconscious egoic part's vantage point that is not supportive of conscious sovereignty? If we're busy being unhappy, how can we be consciously sovereign, equanimous, at peace within ourselves, optimally co-creatively empowered, and resonant in full surrender to spirit? You see the discontinuity, the non-contiguous dynamic of internal fragmented subconscious dynamics. All of this is resolvable. We're not trying to throw a bunch of information out and say, oh, look at all these problems. All of this is resolvable. We're attempting to give you a filter, a way to dial down the distortion, the static, the background misinformation, the attempted influences, the co-opting in training dynamics and energies, so that in your visual cortex, for example, all that's there is clean, pure, useful, constructive information available to you from spirit or from higher sources, your guides, archangels, ascended masters, etc., that will be informative to you and your life process from moment to moment, and won't be ungrounded or derailed by any of these underlying energies. The root chakra or hip chakra inputs would often attempt to unground the system out of fear, insecurity, anxiety, stress, worry, or self-judgment, or turning one against oneself at that level, so that we become ungrounded, and that ungrounded state will then become a domino effect to the rest of the system, which would then impede our capacity to be fully resonant, surrendered, and empowered co-creatively in reference to the process of God. So if you recognize all of these dynamics for what they are, and recognize certainly they are a path of learning and evolution, they're somewhat the more glacial path. We'll all get there eventually. It's our choice whether it takes a lifetime or 1,000 lifetimes. You'll be left to your own devices if you don't ask for help from spirit, from your guides, from ascended masters, Buddhas, bodhisattvas, etc. if you ask, you do tend to get. And it's important to, when you ask for anything, to understand if there's any resistance in your system to asking for that, then you can ask that that resistance be resolved simultaneous to the request for the implementation or the augmentation of your current systemic capacity and process and or dynamic. If you ask that the only information you get ever is from sources that are aligned with your highest and best good, with spirit, and the highest quality information without distortion of all from any of those sources, you're going to diminish the potential for misinformation to be embodied or imbibed or digested in your system from the get-go, so that there's far less potential. And if you do the Om Vajra Sattva Hum mantra a lot and asking for this purification of internal process, there'll be less chinks in your armor or blind spots or parts of your system that might inadvertently open the door to non-optimal energies or information. So what we're getting at by saying that is, then when you get the chills, or then when you get information, it'll make more sense. It'll be more likely to be coming from higher sources or from your soul process or spirit. It'll be more understandable because there'll be less static on the line. You'll be able to focus better on truly interpreting it consciously and discerningly as to what is this telling me? What is the meaning and implication of this information? And of course, it is useful to have the eye and ear chakras as open and clear as possible. And we may tomorrow be able to give a meditation that would facilitate an overall cleansing and purification of the entirety of the system, that would help in all of these regards. So keeping your eye and ear chakras cleansed is a visualization of the golden net or mesh of Archangel Michael sweeping through your aura and sweeping through your chakras and collecting out any and all stored simulacra, beliefs, patterns, dysfunctions, etc. There's also a meditation on the website. There are the 4 transformational meditations. One of them is to visualize a sphere of light, a representation of God becoming present in front of you, and intending willfully that any and all distorted patterns be vacuumed up into that light to be healed. It's drawn out of your system, and that any and all space that had previously been occupied by them be filled with the golden light of God from that sphere of light. So this is a constant filtration, purification, and that leads to enhanced capacity to manage your internal process consciously and discerningly from moment to moment in regard to any potential energies you might interact with, so you don't get stuck to them. You can learn from them, you can understand them, not get stuck to them, enmeshed with them, or participative in their process. So this meditation will be a meditation on purification of the human system. And we will do our best to bring in multiple cleansing modalities simultaneously in order to effect that result. If you'd all take a slow, deep breath of light and love from spirit, and observe that pure, unadulterated, unfiltered, unfettered, infinitely powerful light of God. Recognize it as neither male nor female, as beyond all duality, beyond all limitation, co-creatively powerful beyond our conceptualizations of co-creative power. And if you breathe that light and love of spirit into your hearts and into your minds, and you focus on it with laser precision, absolutely, so that it becomes your internal universe. It becomes your internal experience of life, thought, emotion, energy, all sensory input. All of it is that light and only that light. And if, as you breathe in that light of spirit, you see it expand, and as it expands, it meets any and all energies or patterns or karmas or simulacra recordings, ego identified fragments that have been stored in any chakra of your system, any organ of your body, any portion of your body, including arms and legs, hands and feet, knees, hips, shoulders, elbows, wrists, cervical spine, every dimension of your brain, temporal lobe, visual cortex, amygdala, pituitary. This light meets all of those with purifying intention so that all of them become that light. All of them are recognized to be that light. All of them are expressions, pure expressions, intentional, conscious expressions of that light and of its associated infinite wisdom and discerning capacities. If you see that light extending upward, like a white laser beam all the way to God, a broad beam of light, a spotlight, and that same beam of light extending down into the core of the earth. And as it meets any and every energy that is not fully aligned with that light, it is burned away or pushed out of that beam of light so that it is a continuity, a constant and forever and permanent continuity of light from spirit to the center of the earth and from the center of the earth to spirit. And that in both directions of flow, the light remains pure. The light remains bright, brilliant, energized, white light that encompasses all colors of light, all possibilities of energy, energetic expression, and simultaneously remains harmonious and complete in its process and its expression. If you visualize that light meeting each of your main in-body chakras and purifying them, blasting them with the white light in a caring, loving way that is also absolute in its effect, so that there is only spirit there. There is only the light there. There is only spiritual will, spiritual intention, spiritual consciousness, the consciousness of spirit, not any complexified spiritual egoic process running, only the light of spirit, and only the will of spirit, and only the understanding and consciousness of spirit residing in each and every chakra. Only the quality of consciousness of spirit, unadulterated, unfiltered, non-distorted, totally unaffected by any ambient energies, by any consensus consciousness energies, by any tribal energies, by any taproot energies, by any egoic energies of any kind. They are external to this column of light and remain so. There are no holes in the bucket. There are no leaks in the column of light. It is intended to be pure, to always operate in a pure fashion, to remain eternally, totally pure. If we set that as a collective intention now, as individuals, as a team of teams, that is the standard by which we choose to operate as team members. That is the standard we choose to operate as teams. That is the standard we choose to operate from as an organization. That is our mode of interacting and interfacing with all of humanity, all of the natural world, in all of its dimensions across all time, all past, present, and future moments and experiences, conversations, communications, interactions, behaviors, decisions of all kinds, and free will choice expressions of all kinds. If we set that intention and hold to it with absolute, resolute, surrendered spiritual willpower, that will be our reality. That will be our experience. That will be our expression, our soul expression in this lifetime and every lifetime. Breathe in one more time into your heart and soul and mind, that light of spirit, and ask that this intention be upheld, supported, nurtured, nourished, protected forever by spirit. That it remain inviolate from all counter narratives, counter intentions, counter energies, counter events, circumstances, social process of all kinds, spiritual effects that would undermine it, mental effects that would undermine it, emotional effects that would undermine it, biological effects that would undermine it. If it remains inviolate in regard to all of those forever. And you stand always as the light, resolute, constantly evolving and constantly unchanging in a way. We breathe in one more breath of light from spirit into our hearts, souls, minds, emotions, and bodies, the totality of our energy systems. And breathe that back out to spirit and all of humanity in love and gratitude for this time and this moment, this empowerment, this attained capacity, this made available option and opportunity for catalytic evolution of consciousness. This offered model to humanity in service to God, Spirit, all of humanity, and the natural world. And if we close this meditation with the sound of Om, spoken in pure surrender and love of Spirit and all sentient beings. Om.